Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media. As he picked the dried deer blood from beneath his fingernails, he waited for his father to catch his breath. Now about 2 miles from the trailhead, they were far enough away that the sound of traffic was muted and the forest resumed its peaceful serenade. As they made the last stretch of the climb, their boots left fleeting evidence in the frost on the ground. The buck's carcass lay a few hundred yards ahead, having slid to a stop after the fatal shot was fired at sunup. Now, as hunters say, the work begins. A flash of movement caught the older man's eye as the men topped a small rise. Both hunters froze to examine the source of the movement and ensure they could proceed safely. What was initially a single flash of movement turned into 3 separate flashes as the men watched one grizzly lift its nose to the breeze as the other 2 stared ominously toward the men. Hunting in grizzly country is always a risk. Most hunters consider the possibility of running into a bear, but running into 3, as they now claim your deer carcass, is something impossible to anticipate. As their predicament was being processed, the grizzlies began charging the men. It seemed like they'd communicated a plan without exchanging a glance, and were now executing it. The men began shouting in unison and waving their arms, hoping the bears would identify them as humans and pull up. But the bears knew full well just what the men were, and as they closed in, the hunters raised their rifles. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. East of the little community of Seeley Lake, Montana, the Pyramid Pass Trail climbs out of a narrow valley and into the high country that links the Blackfoot Basin to the Swan Range. The landscape here is classic northern Rockies, thick stands of lodgepole and Douglas fir, pockets of spruce and cedar in the drainages, and fingers of avalanche shoots cutting down from snowfields that hang on well into summer. In November, the larch have already dropped their needles, leaving gray trunks and barren slopes, but the understory is still a tangle of huckleberry, alder, and deadfall. This is core grizzly country now. The area lies within the northern Continental Divide ecosystem, a huge block of wildland stretching from the Bob Marshall Wilderness area up through Glacier National Park and into Canada, home to more than 1,000 grizzly bears as of the mid-2000s. That number represents a conservation success story. When grizzlies in the lower 48 were listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act in 1975, managers estimated only a few hundred remained outside of Alaska. But success has a shadow as the population rebounded and bears followed food into lower elevations. They began to overlap more and more with people. Hunters, ranchers, cabin owners, and berry pickers suddenly found themselves sharing drainages with predators that could weigh 500 pounds, run faster than a racehorse, and defend a carcass with terrifying commitment. The residents of the Seeley Swan Valley have been living with that overlap for years. Mountain ranges on either side funnel wildlife along the chain of lakes and river bottoms, and the mix of public land, private ranches, and scattered homes creates a patchwork where the wild and human worlds tangle. In early June of this year, a landowner in the Swan Valley between Condon and Seeley Lake stepped outside at night to check on his dogs and livestock after hearing a disturbance. A grizzly bear charged at close range. He fired in self-defense, killing the bear and walking away unhurt. The previous November, another hunter south of Placid Lake, just down the road from Seeley Lake, shot and killed an adult male grizzly in what state officials also ruled self-defense. These are just incidents that ended in bullets. Across Montana, encounters that stop with a roar, a burst of bear spray, or a rapid retreat rarely make headlines. In October of 2025, state reports noted a lone hunter using bear spray to stop a charging grizzly, the cloud of irritant turning the bear at close range before contact. Behind those stories is a bigger trend. As grizzly numbers have grown in the northern Continental Divide and greater Yellowstone ecosystems, managers have watched conflict calls rise with them. A Flathead Valley report in mid-2025 noted that across Montana, relocations of conflict grizzlies jumped from 9 in 2023 to 29 in 2024, a more than threefold increase in a single year. Each relocation, each euthanized bear, and each self-defense shooting represents a breakdown in that uneasy coexistence. In the early morning hours of November 5, 2025, a father and son were enjoying time hunting mule deer on the slopes of Pyramid Peak. The father, whom we'll call Bill, and his son, whom we'll call Sam, had enjoyed hunting in the rugged area for the past few years and knew what to expect from it. In the morning twilight, Bill and Sam had located a nice buck on an adjacent ridge and quickly worked themselves into position for a shot. It wasn't long after the crack of the hunting rifle that the big buck staggered downhill and collapsed. A brief round of congratulations and celebration between the men brought them to the trail to recover the carcass. After gutting the deer, they continued hunting for a short while before eating a snack. They returned to recover the deer carcass before the heat of the day set in, when they noticed some movement in the brush around the buck's carcass. That is when 3 grizzly bears began moving in the trees surrounding the deer carcass. One initially, then 2 others materialized from the forest, creating a standoff with the men, with only 100 yards separating them. Now, in the fancy brochures the government puts out, it says to wave your arms and shout at a bear if it charges you, as it may not know you're a human. It is like they think the bear has breached one of Mother Nature's protocols, and a loud noise will somehow bring it back to its senses. These bears reacted in unison, as if a mutual decision to charge the men was a collective directive. Talking a charging grizzly out of an attack is like trying to settle down an upset woman, or convince a wasp you meant no harm. The only thing you can do in all 3 scenarios is stay calm and hope for the best. Bill and Sam were not exactly ready for the bears to come charging. They had their rifles slung over their shoulders at the time, though they were still loaded, with nothing in the chamber. Sam whipped his rifle from its sling and shouldered it, while working around into the chamber in one smooth motion. For accuracy's sake, if he had to shoot one of the bears, he knew it would be clear once they were within 30 yards. And once they crossed that line, he fired at the closest bear, then chambered another round. He fired again, this time at the second bear. The third bear suddenly peeled off its attack and veered into the brush. The grizzly bear Sam initially fired upon dropped in her tracks. Judging by her larger size and role in initiating the charge, she appeared to be the mother of the 2 remaining bears. The grizzly that was hit by the second shot broke off its attack and hobbled slowly into the brush, its wounds apparently lethal but not immediately fatal. With their hearts hammering, Bill and Sam kept an eye on the brush, just in case the surviving bear circled them. They slowly backed their way down the mountain and reached out to the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to report the incident. Over the next few days, biologists and law enforcement officers from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service were on scene, hiking the same trail the hunters had used, this time looking for carcasses, blood, and spent brass instead of a deer. They found what the men had described, the remains of 2 grizzly bears near the mule deer carcass. Confirmation that the shots had killed a female and one of her yearling cubs. The second yearling, the one that ran, was never found. Because grizzlies remain listed as a threatened species in the lower 48, every lethal shooting triggers a federal review. Agents interviewed the hunters, surveyed the scene, and compared the physical evidence with the account they'd been given. As of the latest reports, officials continued to describe the case as self-defense. 3 bears running directly at 2 men on foot, a fresh carcass nearby, and no injuries to the humans. In the short term, the Forest Service posted bright warning signs at the Pyramid Pass trailhead, alerting hikers and hunters that recent grizzly activity had occurred in the area. As for the bears' motives in the incident, they're more complex. The bears were claiming the deer carcass as their own food source. Grizzlies are known for fiercely defending cached animal carcasses. The cubs, though 2 years old, were likely following their mother in reaction to her behavior. Although they were definitely large enough to maim or kill a human, it is doubtful if they had enough experience to do so on their own. The final factor in the equation is the sow's protective instincts for her cubs. Adding all factors leads to a dangerous scenario of a hungry sow and cubs reacting to a perceived threat. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to photos, episodes, and notes. And the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. Montana currently hosts a grizzly bear population estimated to be as high as 2,000 bears over its 147,040 square miles, making a grizzly bear density of 1 grizzly per 73 square miles. With most of the state being uninhabited by bears, those numbers seem deceptively low. Using the frequency of grizzlies in known grizzly habitat, which makes up about 1/3 of the state, the grizzly bear density rises to about 1 grizzly per 20 square miles or less in prime habitat. Growing at around 3% per year, the grizzly populations of Montana are healthy, stable, and robust. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. With a growth rate of 3% per year, and each of those new bears requiring at least 20 square miles to survive, how many more grizzlies do you think western Montana can hold? If the deer hunters had fired warning shots, could they have avoided having to kill 2 of the grizzlies? Do you think the use of an air horn to announce their approach would have alerted the bears enough to avoid this incident? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.